They say in Maine we have two seasons, winter and the 4th of July. So remember, winter, lots of snow. Okay, so this in Maine, this is called a fruit cellar. This is where you harvest your crops and bring them in and put them in barrels and bottles and jars and so on, and keep things for the winter time. And so this is very typical of the state of Maine. Okay, now about connection, I thought I'd
Why won't you just tell us who is in the picture?
tell you about the picture.
Yeah.
Okay, this is my cousin, Mark Wentworth Holmes. MTW up there was Mark Wentworth, who brought his family over with this building. Well, when we had identified most of the places of the houses of the Americans who had come, where they were, but we didn't know who built this one, even though this is the one that we felt was the appropriate one for us to have. So when we were getting it ready for restoring and making a beautiful place out of it, I was around looking to see if I could find, they used to put initials or the name of the father of the family on the lumber, packages of lumber that were brought over. It was pre-cut, prefabricated house. Okay, so I was looking around saying, work, any initials? And I was up on the, you call it here the first floor, we call it the second floor. And we had just stripped the plaster, the lath and plaster off the ceiling of that room up there. And they were MTW. Imagine my thrill. The only father that came over with his family was Mark T. Wentworth. Mark Wentworth was his name. This boy's name is Mark Wentworth Holmes. We shared a great-grandfather whose name was Wentworth Holmes. So I was so thrilled to discover the connection of this house, which we wanted so much. Here we are.
Let me pass this picture around. How old are you in this picture?
We were 19 years old.
19?
Yeah.
Okay, but when I was 19.
Yeah, just turn it around.
And what?
91.
1991.
אה, 91. זה הגיל של ריד השנה. השנה הוא בן 91.
So...
Would you like to introduce Jean to us?
Yeah. This is my genius. Among other things, she is a licensed construction supervisor in the state of Massachusetts with a lot of experience in rebuilding, preserving and rebuilding old wooden houses in the state of Massachusetts. And I'm so glad that she's here.
Where do you live in Maine?
Pardon?
Where do you live in Maine?
In Jonesport, where the people came from that bought their houses over. Not all of them, but that was the central place and the port, Jonesport, where they loaded, they loaded the houses on board at Machias Port, which had been founded by a Holmes family, as a matter of fact. And then they brought the ship over to Jonesport, and 157 people got on board 35 families, including the
Little ones.
little babies that were long instead of tall. Okay. And this is Jane.
So why won't you tell us, Jean, a bit about the preservation process, or why you decided to buy this house and preserve it?
Well, when I first came to Israel, Reed had already been coming about 10 years and bringing groups over. So I saw a wonderful presentation he did of pictures of Israel. I said, oh, you know, that looks pretty interesting. I like buildings and things, and I don't know anything about Israel, so he said, well, why don't you come on a trip? And I did that. And my first trip here, he brought us to this neighborhood, which was on a rainy, dark January day, and all the houses were falling down, and lots of criminals and cats around, and it looked really dismal. But he said, you know, there used to be a lot more of these houses here. This is the American Colony, and there were wooden houses brought from Maine, and they keep disappearing. The bulldozers come, and they take them down.
Which year was that?
That was in 1981. So I said, you know, Reed, you need to draw up a plan and have this whole neighborhood saved as a historic district. It sounded like an easy thing to do for me, so he said, go ahead, do it. And I drew up a plan, and I took it to the Iria, and I found out they had a plan for the neighborhood. They were going to demolish more houses and put a big road right through here. And all of the houses were going to be gone, all the old houses. And I thought, well, that's not good. At that same year, Reed had published the book, The ForeRunners. It was only in English at that time, but people started reading it, and they realized there's more to the story than what you can see in that neighborhood the way it was. So we thought we could buy one building and make a nice center there and tell the history of the people. And we started to negotiate on that at the same time while working with the Iria to change the law so that you could protect a building even though it wasn't 500 years old, which is what they said. And eventually they did make guidelines to save the whole neighborhood. And what you see now with all these streets and the new lanterns and the light, the wire underground is exactly the result of our discussions with the Iria back in the 1980s.
So 28 years later.
Yeah, 20-some years later.
That's good.
I'm just saying you must have faith in your government that eventually they'll do the right thing. And we had many historians and preservation architects who at that time also started trying to preserve Neve Zedek and some of the other places. And Yossi Feldman makes beautiful sites around the country that you can visit, like Kfar Tavor and the Dubrovin Farm, and all of these are 19th century sites. And he also was trying to help us so that a whole team of people developed at that time, and because of that I think Israel has a lot more to offer now, and people can see the history of the early history pre the state of Israel, history of people who were like these Americans, believed that this was going to be the modern state of Israel, and it's a Zionist state for the Jewish people, and kol hakavod. That's all I can say.
תודה רבה. יש למישהו כאן שאלות? So, אם יש לי